Logan Pierce stood in the center of a glass-walled boardroom filled with men in $1,000 suits, his janitor's uniform still damp from mopping the executive floor. His voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Sign that contract, Ms. Brooks, and you'll destroy 3,000 lives by next quarter." Every head turned. Elena Brooks, the youngest CEO in the company's history, froze with her pen inches above the signature line. The room erupted. Security moved toward him, but Elena raised one hand, her ice blue eyes locked on his. "Stop." She set down the pen. "Talk. What ye? Thank you for watching. Please hit the like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the financial tower's 72nd floor hummed like dying insects at 2 in the morning. Logan Pierce pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway, the wheels squeaking rhythmically against the polished stone. His reflection ghosted across the floor-to-ceiling windows. A tall man in his early 30s, broad-shouldered but hunched with exhaustion, wearing the gray uniform that marked him as invisible to everyone who worked here during daylight hours. He'd been invisible for 3 years now. That was exactly how he needed it. Logan stopped outside conference room C and swiped his access card. The lock clicked green. Inside, the room still smelled like expensive cologne and the particular brand of arrogance that came with closing billion-dollar deals. Someone had left half a sandwich on the table. Another had abandoned a coffee cup with lipstick on the rim. Logan had learned not to judge. These people made more in a day than he made in a year. They could afford to waste things. He started with the trash cans, working methodically. Empty, wipe down, replace the liner. His mind was already 3 steps ahead. 2 more conference rooms on this floor, then the executive lounge, then down to 71. If he kept pace, he'd finish his route by 6 and make it home before Mia woke up. That was the goal every night. Be there when she opened her eyes. Make her breakfast. Walk her to the bus stop. Be the one constant thing in her world that didn't disappear. The document caught his eye because it was still warm. Logan's hand hovered over the printer tray. Someone had printed something and forgotten it, or left in such a hurry they hadn't noticed. He picked up the stack of papers, intending to set them on the table where someone would find them in the morning, but the header stopped him cold. Project Streamline, Confidential Phase 1. Implementation, Q2, Workforce Reduction. Logan's pulse kicked up. He knew he shouldn't read it, knew that touching confidential documents was grounds for immediate termination, possibly worse. But his eyes had already caught the numbers in the executive summary. Projected cost savings, $847 million annually. Workforce reduction, 2,847 positions. Target facilities, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee. His breath caught. He flipped to the next page. The detail was clinical, surgical. Each facility listed with current headcount, proposed headcount, and projected closure timeline. The Chicago plant, the one where his former colleague Martinez still worked, the guy who'd helped Logan move into his apartment after everything fell apart, was scheduled for complete shutdown. 432 jobs. Gone. Logan's hands started to shake. He knew these tactics. He'd seen them before, back when he was on the other side of the table, back when he was the one building the financial models that made mass layoffs look like smart business strategy. Before his wife died, before everything that mattered became just one thing, keeping Mia safe. He kept reading. The deal was structured as a merger acquisition between Brooks Industries and Meridian Capital Group. But the more Logan read, the less it looked like a merger, and the more it looked like a controlled demolition. Brooks Industries would acquire Meridian's high-value assets, meaning their client lists, their technology patents, their Manhattan real estate. Everything else would be liquidated. The people who built those assets? Expendable. And there, at the bottom of the organizational chart, was the name that would be signing off on all of it, Elena Brooks, CEO. Logan had seen her exactly once, 3 months ago. She'd walked through the executive floor at 7 in the evening, trailing 2 assistants and talking rapidly into her phone. She couldn't have been more than 30. Tall, sharply dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than his monthly rent, moving with the kind of focused intensity that made everyone else in the hallway unconsciously step aside. She hadn't looked at him. People like her never did. He carefully set the documents back in the printer tray. his janitor's instinct warring with something older, something he'd tried to bury, the part of him that used to care about numbers that represented human lives, the part that used to believe the system could be fixed from the inside. That part had been wrong before. It had cost him everything. Logan finished cleaning the conference room in silence, but his mind wouldn't stop turning. 2,800 people, families, mortgages, kids in college, people who'd done nothing wrong except work for a company that someone else decided was worth more in pieces than whole. He made it home by 6:15. The apartment was quiet. Logan moved through the small kitchen, putting on coffee, pulling eggs from the refrigerator. His hand still felt unsteady. "Daddy?" Mia stood in the doorway of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. She was small for 9, with dark hair that fell in tangles around her face and her mother's brown eyes. She wore the oversized t-shirt she'd claimed as her favorite pajamas, one of Logan's old marathon shirts from back when he used to run. "Morning, sweetheart?" Logan forced brightness into his voice. "You're up early. You weren't here when I woke up last time." Her voice was small. Guilt hit him like a fist. 2 nights ago, he'd gotten stuck on the executive floor because someone had spilled an entire pitcher of water in the main conference room. By the time he'd finished, Mia had already left for school. "I know. I'm sorry." He opened his arms and she crossed the kitchen, letting him fold her into a hug. She smelled like sleep and the strawberry shampoo they bought in bulk from the discount store. "But I'm here now. How about pancakes? Can we put chocolate chips in them?" "Absolutely not." He pulled back, mock serious. "What kind of father do you think I am?" Her face fell for just a second before she caught his expression. "You're teasing. I am completely serious. We're going to have extremely healthy pancakes made from... Let me check." He made a show of opening the cabinet. "Flour, eggs, milk, and an entirely reasonable amount of chocolate chips." Mia giggled. The sound was worth every sleepless hour. They made breakfast together, Mia standing on a stool to help stir the batter while Logan heated the griddle. This was their time. The quiet morning hour before the world demanded things from both of them. Before she had to be the kid whose mom died and whose dad worked nights. Before he had to be the guy who emptied trash cans in rooms where decisions about thousands of lives were made like items on a grocery list. "Daddy!" Mia poured chocolate chips into the batter with more enthusiasm than precision. "Do you like your job?" Logan paused. "That's a big question for 7 in the morning." "Mrs. Patterson asked us to write about what our parents do. I said you clean offices, but I don't know if you like it." He looked at his daughter's serious face and chose his words carefully. "I like that it lets me take care of you. That's the most important part." "But did you always want to clean offices?" "No." He poured batter onto the griddle, watching it sizzle. "I used to do something different. I worked with numbers and helped companies make decisions about money." "Why did you stop?" "Because sometimes..." He flipped the first pancake, buying himself a second to think. "Sometimes the things that look important aren't actually important, and sometimes you have to choose what matters most." "And I matter most?" She said it matter-of-factly, like confirming a known truth. "You matter most." He slid the pancake onto her plate. "Everything else is just noise." She nodded, satisfied, and drowned her pancake in syrup. But as Logan watched her eat, his mind kept drifting back to those documents. 2,800 people who mattered most to someone. 2,800 families about to be told they were just noise. The signing ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. on Thursday. Logan knew because he'd seen the memo on Elena Brooks' desk while emptying her trash can. A glossy invitation printed on heavy cardstock. "You are cordially invited to witness the next evolution of Brooks Industries." He had 3 days. Logan spent his breaks at the public library, using their computers to research everything he could find about the deal. The public filings were vague, corporate speak designed to say nothing while using many words. But he'd learned to read between the lines back when this was his job. The numbers told the real story, if you knew how to look. Meridian Capital Group was bleeding money. Had been for 2 years. Their core business, mid-market manufacturing, was profitable enough, but they'd made a series of catastrophic investments in a tech subsidiary that never materialized. They needed this acquisition to survive, which meant they had no leverage, which meant Elena Brooks was choosing to structure the deal this way. Logan pulled up every interview he could find with her. She'd taken over as CEO 18 months ago when her father had a stroke. Arthur Brooks had built the company over 30 years, growing it from a regional player to a national force. Elena had an MBA from Wharton, 3 years at Goldman Sachs, and a reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and utterly focused on growth. In every interview, she said some version of the same thing. Business is about making the hard choices that create long-term value. Logan wondered if she'd ever met any of the people those hard choices crushed. On Wednesday night, he made a decision that he knew was probably insane. The financial tower lobby on Thursday morning was transformed. Someone had brought in plants, huge potted trees that probably cost more than Logan's car. A catering company had set up a coffee and pastry station. Men and women in expensive suits clustered in groups, their voices echoing off the marble. Logan walked past security wearing the spare shirt and tie he kept in his locker. He'd shaved, combed his hair, put on the only blazer he still owned from his old life. It didn't fit quite right anymore. He'd lost weight over the past 3 years, but it was close enough. The guard glanced at him, then away. That was the thing about looking like you belonged. Most people didn't question it. The elevator ride to the 72nd floor felt like drowning in slow motion. Logan's heart hammered against his ribs. His hands were sweating. Every logical part of his brain was screaming at him to turn around, get out, go home to Mia, and forget he'd ever seen those documents. But he kept seeing Martinez's face, kept thinking about 432 families in Chicago alone. The elevator doors opened. The boardroom was packed. Logan counted at least 40 people. Executives from both companies, lawyers, a few journalists in the back row. At the head of the table sat Elena Brooks. She was even more striking in person. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled back in a way that was elegant without being soft, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Logan made in 3 months. She was listening to something an older man in a gray suit was saying, her expression neutral, controlled. On the table in front of her sat the contract, a leather portfolio, a silver pen. Logan walked forward. He felt every eye in the room turn toward him, felt the shift in energy from professional anticipation to confused alarm. Someone said, "Excuse me, who are you?" But Logan kept walking until he stood directly across the table from Elena Brooks. She looked up. Her eyes were the color of a winter sky just before snow, pale gray-blue, sharp, assessing. For a moment, neither of them moved. "Sign that contract, Ms. Brooks," Logan said, his voice somehow steady, "and you'll destroy 3,000 lives by next quarter." The room exploded. "Security!" someone shouted. "How did he get in here? Who the hell is this guy?" But Elena Brooks held up one hand, and incredibly, everyone fell silent. She was still looking at Logan with those winter eyes, and he couldn't read what he saw there. Curiosity? Anger? Calculation? "Stop," she said quietly, then louder. "Everyone sit down. Ms. Brooks, this is highly irregular. I said sit down." Her voice cut like a blade. The older man in the gray suit, probably her general counsel, subsided reluctantly. Elena set down the pen and folded her hands on top of the contract. "You have 2 minutes. Talk." Logan's mouth was dry. He hadn't actually planned what he would say beyond the opening line. But now that he was here, now that he'd already jumped off the cliff, he might as well say everything. "My name is Logan Pierce. 3 years ago, I was a senior analyst at Carmichael Associates. I built the financial models for the Grayson Manufacturing acquisition. You probably don't remember it. The company was smaller, the deal was only worth $200 million, but the structure was the same as what you're about to sign. Acquire the valuable assets, liquidate the rest, call it a merger for the press release." Elena's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "Grayson employed 800 people," Logan continued. "The models showed we could achieve the same productivity with 250 if we consolidated operations and automated certain processes. The remaining 550 positions would be eliminated over 6 months. On paper, it was clean, elegant, a textbook example of operational efficiency." He took a breath. "My wife and I celebrated when the deal closed. We bought champagne. I got a promotion. And then 6 months later, one of those 550 eliminated positions shot himself in his garage because he couldn't face his family after losing everything." The room was absolutely silent now. His name was David Chen. He'd worked at Grayson for 23 years. His daughter was starting college that fall. He had 3 months of savings and no prospects because every other manufacturer in the region was doing the same thing we were, cutting labor costs to boost margins. He left a note that said he was sorry for being expendable. Logan's voice cracked slightly. He didn't try to hide it. I quit the next day. My wife thought I was having a breakdown. Maybe I was. We fought about it constantly. She wanted me to go back, to stop being ridiculous, to think about our future. And then she died in a car accident on her way home from an interview she'd scheduled because she didn't trust me to provide for our family anymore. Elena's face was very still. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not sure what this has to do with everything. Logan pulled the folded documents from his jacket pocket. He'd made copies from the printer's memory drive using a terminal in the basement. Technically theft. He didn't care anymore. Project Streamline. 2,847 positions across 4 facilities. The Chicago plant alone employs 432 people. Did you know that the average employee there has been with Meridian for 14 years? Did you know that 70% of them are over 45? Do you have any idea how hard it is for a 48-year-old machinist to find comparable work in this economy? He spread the papers on the table in front of her. These aren't numbers. They're people. They have names, families, mortgages, kids who need braces and college funds and birthday presents. And you're about to tell all of them that their entire lives were just line items in a spreadsheet. Mr. Pierce. Elena's voice was cold now, controlled. I understand you've experienced a personal tragedy. I'm sympathetic to that. But you're making assumptions about a complex business decision based on incomplete. I have the complete financial model. Logan pulled out another set of papers. I know how you're structuring the acquisition. I know that you're only valuing Meridian's intellectual property and client base. I know that you're planning to shutter the manufacturing operations entirely and outsource production to lower-cost facilities overseas. I know that the projected savings of $847 million is calculated almost entirely from eliminated labor costs. Elena's jaw tightened. How did you access confidential? It doesn't matter how I accessed it. What matters is that you're about to do exactly what I did 3 years ago. You're about to make a decision that looks perfect on paper and destroys real lives. And unlike me, you won't even be in the room when those people find out they're expendable. Security, the older man in the gray suit said sharply. Remove this man immediately. 2 security guards were already moving toward Logan. He didn't resist. He'd said what he came to say. But as they took his arms, he looked directly at Elena Brooks. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. There are other ways to structure this deal. Ways that preserve jobs while still achieving growth. I've run the numbers, but you have to want to find them. Get him out of here, the general counsel snapped. But Elena Brooks spoke before the guards could move. Wait. Everyone froze. She stood up slowly, her eyes still locked on Logan's. Mr. Simmons, clear the room. Everyone except Mr. Pierce. Miss Brooks, I strongly advise, clear the room. Each word was carved from ice. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then, reluctantly, people began to move. The executives gathered their things with poorly concealed resentment. The lawyers exchanged meaningful looks. The journalists tried to linger until Elena's glare sent them scattering. In less than 2 minutes, the boardroom was empty except for Logan, Elena, and the 2 security guards. You too, Elena told the guards. Ma'am, if this individual poses a threat, he's unarmed and I'm capable of pressing a panic button. Wait outside. The guards withdrew reluctantly, closing the door behind them. Elena walked slowly around the table until she stood directly in front of Logan. She was tall, probably 5'10" without the heels, and she looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Up close, he could see the faint shadows under her eyes, evidence that even CEOs occasionally ran short on sleep. You've just committed corporate espionage, she said quietly. Accessed confidential documents, made copies, disrupted a major business transaction. I could have you arrested right now. Probably should. Logan met her eyes. I know. You have a daughter, you said. What happens to her if you go to prison? The question hit harder than any threat. Logan's hands clenched at his sides. I guess I'll find out. That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. Something that might have been a smile flickered across her face. It was gone so fast, Logan couldn't be sure. Elena walked back to the head of the table and sat down, gesturing for Logan to take the chair across from her. Sit, you said you ran the numbers, show me. Logan sat slowly, not quite believing this was happening. He pulled out the last set of papers, his own analysis, worked out over 3 nights of borrowed computer time at the library. His hands were still shaking slightly as he spread the documents on the table. The core assumption in your model is that Meridian's manufacturing capacity is redundant, that you can maintain the same output with your existing facilities plus outsourced production. He pointed to the relevant section. But that's only true if demand remains constant. Your own market research shows projected growth of 18 to 23% over the next 3 years in Meridian's core sectors. If that projection is accurate, you'll need the additional capacity. Elena leaned forward, studying the numbers. We can scale outsourced production to meet increased demand. At what cost? Your overseas manufacturers charge 15% less per unit than Meridian's internal costs, but that doesn't account for shipping, import tariffs, or the quality control issues you've experienced with your current overseas partners. Logan pulled up another document. I have the incident reports. 3 recalls in the past 18 months, each costing you between $4 and $7 million, plus the reputational damage. Elena's eyes narrowed. How did you... She stopped herself. Never mind. Continue. If you retain Meridian's manufacturing capacity and invest in modernization, new equipment, better processes, you can reduce costs by 9% while maintaining quality control and flexibility. Yes, it requires capital investment up front, but over 5 years, the total cost of ownership is actually lower than the outsourced model, and you're not exposed to supply chain disruptions. He slid another paper across the table. Here's the revised financial model. You still acquire Meridian's IP and client base. You still achieve significant growth. But instead of eliminating 2,800 positions, you're reducing headcount by approximately 400 through voluntary early retirement and natural attrition. The savings are lower, about $500 million instead of $847 million. But the risk profile is better, the operational flexibility is better, and nobody has to lose their job. Elena studied the documents in silence. Logan watched her eyes move across the numbers, watched her brain work through the implications. This was the woman who'd built a reputation for being ruthless. He had no idea if anything he'd said would matter. Finally, she looked up. This is good work. Logan released a breath he hadn't known he was holding. But it's also incomplete, Elena continued. You're making assumptions about market growth that may not materialize. You're underestimating the challenges of integrating 2 different manufacturing cultures, and you're not accounting for the pressure I'm under from the board to deliver strong short-term results. Short-term results that come from destroying thousands of lives. No, her voice was sharp. Short-term results that come from making the difficult choices necessary to keep this company competitive in a brutal market. You think I want to eliminate jobs? You think I enjoy it? I think you're very good at justifying it. Elena stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She walked to the window and stood there, looking out over the city. From 72 floors up, everything looked small, manageable, abstract. My father built this company with his bare hands, she said quietly. He started with nothing, literally nothing. A $100 loan from a friend and an idea. He worked 18-hour days for 30 years. He missed my childhood, missed my mother's final years when she was sick, gave everything to this company. She turned to face Logan. And then he had a stroke, and the board wanted to sell, break it apart and sell the pieces. He asked me to save it, to keep it whole. And this is how you save it? By becoming the thing he fought against? You don't know what he fought against. You don't know the first thing about running a company this size, making decisions that affect thousands of stakeholders, trying to balance short-term survival with long-term vision. Her voice rose slightly. You ran financial models. I run a company. There's a difference. Yeah, Logan said quietly. I ran the models that told people like you who to fire. The silence between them was heavy. Elena walked back to the table and picked up the contract. For a long moment, she just held it, her expression unreadable. Then she set it down again and looked at Logan. I'll make you a deal, she said. You have tonight to prove that your alternative model is viable. Full access to our financial data, our operational reports, our market research. Build me a complete picture that shows your approach works better than mine. If you can convince me, genuinely convince me, I'll delay the signing and bring your proposal to the board. Logan stared at her. And if I can't? Then I sign the contract tomorrow, you leave this building and never come back, and I don't press charges for corporate espionage. But you're done. You accept the outcome and move on. It was more than he'd expected, more than he had any right to ask for. But looking at Elena's face, Logan understood that this wasn't generosity. This was a test. She wanted to see if he could back up his disruption with substance, wanted to know if he was a broken man grasping at redemption or someone who actually had something to offer. Deal, Logan said. Elena nodded. She pressed a button on the phone. Ms. Chen, please set up Mr. Pierce in conference room B with full data access. He'll be working through the night. She ended the call and looked at Logan. Don't make me regret this. I won't. And Mr. Pierce? Her voice stopped him as he stood to leave. If you're wrong, if your model doesn't hold up under scrutiny, those 2,800 jobs are still gone, and you'll have to live with knowing you tried and failed. Are you prepared for that? Logan thought about Mia, thought about David Chen, thought about every person who was going to open an email or get called into an office and hear that they weren't needed anymore. I'm already living with worse, he said. Then he walked out of the boardroom to try to save the lives of 3,000 people he'd never met. Conference room B was smaller than the boardroom, but still intimidating. Glass walls on 3 sides, a long table with 8 chairs, and a computer terminal that probably cost more than Logan's annual salary. A woman in her mid-30s wearing glasses and a precise gray suit was waiting when he arrived. Mr. Pierce, I'm Susan Chen, Ms. Brooks's executive assistant. I've set up your access credentials. She handed him a temporary key card and a printed sheet with login information. You'll have full read access to our financial databases, operational reports, and market research archives. Write access is disabled, obviously. Obviously, Logan echoed. Susan's expression was carefully neutral, but Logan caught the flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Word had already spread about the janitor who'd crashed the signing ceremony. He wondered what version of the story people were telling. There's coffee in the break room down the hall. The building cafeteria closes at 8, but I can arrange to have dinner sent up if you're working late. She paused. Ms. Brooks said you'd be working through the night. Probably. Then I'll make sure security knows you have authorization to be here. Your key card will access this floor and the executive lounge facilities only. Anywhere else, and you'll trigger an alarm. Understood. Susan turned to leave, then stopped. Mr. Pierce, for what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for. Before Logan could respond, she was gone. He stood alone in this conference room, staring at the computer terminal. The screen showed a login prompt waiting for his credentials. Beyond the glass walls, he could see other offices, some dark, some still occupied by people working late. Everyone moving through their carefully structured professional lives, unaware that their entire company's future was being decided by a janitor with something to prove. Logan sat down and logged in. The system opened to a clean desktop with folders organized by department: finance, operations, legal, human resources, market research. He started with finance, pulling up the complete Meridian acquisition model. It took him 20 minutes just to understand the structure. The deal was even more complex than he'd realized from the summary documents. Brooks Industries wasn't just acquiring Meridian, they were simultaneously divesting 3 of their own underperforming divisions to a private equity firm, using the capital to partially fund the Meridian purchase while improving their debt ratios. It was aggressive, clever, and completely dependent on achieving the projected cost savings, which meant eliminating those 2,800 jobs wasn't just part of the plan. It was the foundation the entire deal was built on. Logan pulled up a spreadsheet and started rebuilding the model from scratch, testing different assumptions. What if they kept the Chicago facility open? The numbers immediately went red. What if they reduced headcount by only 50%? Still red. The deal as structured had almost no flexibility. His phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Ramirez, his neighbor who watched Mia after school. She's asking when you'll be home. Want me to give her dinner? Logan checked the time. 6:30. He'd been at this for 5 hours and barely scratched the surface. Please. I'll be late tonight. Emergency at work. Everything okay? Will be. Thank you. He silenced his phone and dove back into the numbers. By 9 p.m., Logan had consumed 4 cups of terrible break-room coffee and filled 17 pages of a legal pad with calculations. The core problem was becoming clear. Elena's deal wasn't just ruthless, it was fragile. Every projection was optimistic. Market growth rates assumed best-case scenarios. Cost savings assumed perfect execution. Integration timelines assumed no complications. One major disruption, a recession, a supply chain crisis, a quality control failure, and the whole structure would collapse. His alternative model was more conservative but also more stable. Lower returns, yes, but much lower risk. The question was whether he could make that case convincingly enough to overcome the board's appetite for aggressive growth. Logan was studying the third quarter operational reports when he heard the conference room door open. He looked up expecting Susan or a security guard. Elena Brooks stood in the doorway holding 2 paper bags. "You missed dinner," she said. Logan blinked. What? "The cafeteria closed 3 hours ago. Susan said you turned down her offer to have food sent up. I assumed you were too focused to eat, which means you're probably running on empty and making stupid mistakes." She set the bags on the table. "Chicken sandwich or turkey?" "I'm not picky." She slid one bag toward him and took the other for herself, sitting down 2 chairs away. The bag contained a sandwich wrapped in white paper, a bag of chips, and an apple. Simple. Efficient. "Thank you," Logan said. "Don't thank me. I'm protecting my investment. If you're going to do this analysis, I need it done right." She unwrapped her sandwich. "How's it going?" Logan took a bite, realizing he was actually starving. "Your deal is built on a house of cards." Elena's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me? I mean that literally. Every assumption is optimistic. You're projecting 18 to 23% market growth, but the last 5 years have averaged 12%. You're assuming 0 integration complications, but your own post-merger analysis from previous acquisitions shows an average of 4 months delay and 8% cost overrun. You're projecting that outsourced manufacturing will maintain quality standards, but your incident reports tell a different story." "Those are calculated risks," Elena said coolly. "Every major deal involves some degree of optimism. There's optimism and then there's fantasy. Your model has no margin for error. If any single assumption fails, the returns evaporate. And if multiple assumptions fail..." He turned his laptop screen toward her, showing the sensitivity analysis he'd built. "You could actually destroy shareholder value." Elena set down her sandwich and studied the screen. Logan watched her eyes move across the data, saw the exact moment she understood what he was showing her. "You built a Monte Carlo simulation," she said quietly. 10,000 iterations, running every variable through realistic probability distributions based on historical data. Your base case shows strong returns, but the median case shows marginal improvement, and the worst-case quartile shows actual losses. Elena leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "You did this in 5 hours. It's what I used to do. Why did you stop?" The question caught Logan off guard. He took another bite of his sandwich, buying time. "I told you, David Chen. You told me about one man's suicide. That's a tragedy, but it doesn't explain walking away from a career where you were clearly talented." Logan set down the sandwich. "After David Chen died, I went back through every deal I'd worked on, every acquisition model I'd built. I counted how many jobs were eliminated as a direct result of my analysis. The number was over 6,000. He met her eyes. "I started having nightmares about spreadsheets where the cells contained faces instead of numbers. Faces of people I'd never met but whose lives I'd helped end. My wife thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. And now you clean toilets." "Now I clean toilets and sleep at night." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Do you resent me for being on the other side?" "I don't know you well enough to resent you. But you think I'm wrong. I think you're about to make the same mistakes I made, and I think you're smart enough to know better. You're making a lot of assumptions about what I know and don't know." "Then educate me," Logan said. "Tell me why eliminating 2,800 jobs is the right call when there's a viable alternative that preserves most of them." Elena stood and walked to the window. From this height, the city looked like a circuit board, lights in ordered patterns, everything connected, everything functioning. She stood there for a long time before speaking. "My father had a saying, The company that stands still dies slowly. He believed the only way to survive was to keep growing, keep adapting, keep moving faster than the competition. She turned to face Logan. When I took over, we were profitable but stagnant. Market share declining, innovation lagging. The board was openly discussing whether to sell. I promised them I would turn it around. And you have, Logan said. Revenue up 22%. Stock price up 38%. You've exceeded every target, which is exactly why I can't afford to slow down now. The board expects continued growth. The shareholders expect returns. If I present them with a conservative acquisition that delivers modest improvements, they'll see it as weakness, as evidence that I'm not capable of making the hard choices necessary to compete at the highest level. So you're eliminating thousands of jobs to prove you're tough enough? Elena's eyes flashed. I'm eliminating redundant positions to create a leaner, more competitive company that can survive the next 10 years. Do you know how many manufacturing companies have gone under in the past decade? How many have been broken apart by private equity firms and sold for scrap? I'm aware. Then you should understand that I'm trying to avoid that fate. Yes, people will lose jobs. That's unfortunate. But if I don't make these moves, the entire company could fail. And then everyone loses their job. Logan stood to face her. That's the same justification I used. That's what everyone uses. We have to be ruthless to survive. We have to sacrifice the few to save the many. It's a great story. Very compelling. Except it's not true. You think you know better than... I think, Logan interrupted, that you're confusing necessary with easy. Eliminating jobs is easy. It shows immediate results. The numbers improve right away. But building something sustainable, investing in people and processes and long-term capability, that's hard. That takes patience and vision and the willingness to defend choices that don't pay off in the next quarterly report. Elena's jaw tightened. You've been out of this world for 3 years. You have no idea what the current competitive landscape looks like. You're right, I don't. But I know math. And I know that your aggressive model is built on assumptions that won't hold up under scrutiny. Then prove it. Elena walked back to the table and sat down. You've had 5 hours. Show me your alternative. Walk me through the complete model. Convince me. Logan pulled up his laptop and turned it toward her. Okay, let's start with your market growth assumptions. They worked through the night. Elena challenged every number, every assumption, every projection. She was relentless, picking apart his methodology, demanding sources for his data, forcing him to defend every choice. But she was also listening, really listening. When Logan showed her the historical volatility and overseas manufacturing costs, she pulled up additional data to test his conclusions. When he presented his revised integration timeline, she walked through the operational complexities he might have missed. Around 2 a.m., Susan Chen appeared with fresh coffee and worried looks. Ms. Brooks, you have a board meeting at 8. Cancel it. I can't cancel a board meeting. Then reschedule it. Tell them something came up. Susan hesitated, then nodded and disappeared. By 4 a.m., they'd rebuilt the entire acquisition model using Logan's framework. The numbers were less exciting than Elena's original projections, estimated savings of $512 million over 5 years instead of $847 million, with more conservative revenue growth assumptions. But the risk profile was dramatically better. The probability of achieving the projected returns was 73% instead of 41%. The worst-case scenarios still showed positive shareholder value, and only 418 positions would be eliminated instead of 2,847. Elena sat back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. She looked exhausted, human, nothing like the controlled, polished CEO from the boardroom. This is good work, she said quietly. But the board will hate it. They'll see lower returns and assume I'm going soft, getting risk-averse. Are they wrong? Elena laughed, a short, sharp sound. Maybe. I don't know anymore. 6 months ago, I would have looked at your model and dismissed it immediately as too cautious. Now, she trailed off, staring at the spreadsheets. Now what? Now I'm wondering if I've been lying to myself about what success looks like. She met his eyes. I tell myself I'm making hard choices for the good of the company, but maybe I'm just making easy choices that feel hard because they require me to ignore the human cost. Logan didn't say anything. This was Elena's realization to have. My father built this company by valuing people, she said softly. He knew every senior employee by name, went to their weddings, their kids' graduations. When we had to do layoffs during the 2008 crisis, he cried in his office afterward. Actually cried. I thought it was weakness. Now I think maybe it was the only honest response. She stood abruptly and walked to the window. The sky was starting to lighten. Not quite dawn, but the deep blue that came before it. If I bring this to the board, I need you there, Elena said without turning around. They'll have questions you can answer better than I can. Technical questions about the methodology, the assumptions, the risk analysis. You want me to present to your board of directors. I want you to help me defend a position that's going to make me look weak to people who expect me to be strong. Logan thought about what that meant. Stepping back into the world he'd left behind. Standing in front of powerful people and arguing about numbers that represented human lives. Risking everything on the chance that reason and evidence might matter more than ego and short-term thinking. I'll do it, he said, on one condition. Elena turned to face him. What? If the board rejects this and insists on the original deal, you walk away. Excuse me? You don't sign it. You find another CEO who's willing to destroy those jobs, and you let them own that decision. But you don't put your name on it. Elena stared at him. You're asking me to resign. I'm asking you to have the courage of your convictions. You just said maybe you've been lying to yourself, so stop lying. Either this is the right choice or it isn't. But don't compromise by doing something you now believe is wrong just because other people expect it. That's easy for you to say. You've already given up everything. Exactly. So I know what it costs, and I know it's survivable. The silence stretched between them. Outside the windows, the city was beginning to wake up. Lights in other buildings, early traffic on the streets below. The world continuing its relentless forward motion, indifferent to the decisions being made in this room. I need to think, Elena said finally. The board meeting is in 4 hours. I'm aware. She grabbed her suit jacket from the back of her chair. Go home. Get some sleep. Be back here at 9. If I'm going to do this, we do it together. And if you decide not to. Elena paused at the door. Then I'll sign the original deal, you'll walk away knowing you tried, and we'll both have to live with it. She met his eyes. Those were the terms. Then she was gone, leaving Logan alone in the conference room with spreadsheets full of numbers that might or might not save 3,000 jobs. He sat there for another minute, then packed up his laptop and headed for the elevator. The building was eerily quiet, just the hum of HVAC systems and the distant sound of a vacuum cleaner on another floor. One of his colleagues, probably. Someone else working the night shift to keep the building running while the people who made decisions slept in comfortable beds. Logan made it home by 5:30. Mia was still asleep. He stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, and tried to imagine explaining to her why he might not come home tonight. Why he might have pushed too hard and lost everything on a gamble that people in power might choose compassion over profit. He couldn't find the words. Instead, he took a shower, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table staring at his phone. He could walk away right now. Call Elena, tell her he'd changed his mind, disappear back into the safe invisibility of his night shift. No one would blame him. He'd tried. He'd done more than anyone could reasonably expect. But he kept seeing the faces in those operational reports. The employee photos attached to performance reviews. Real people with real lives who had no idea their futures were being decided by spreadsheet formulas. At 7:30, Mia shuffled into the kitchen. You're home, she said, surprised. Just for a bit. I have to go back to work. She climbed into his lap, still half asleep. You were gone all night again. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. Are you in trouble? The question startled him. What makes you think that? You look worried, like when Mom used to yell at you. Logan held her tighter. I'm not in trouble. I'm just trying to help some people who need it. And it's complicated. Is it worth it? He pulled back to look at her serious little face. What do you mean? Mrs. Patterson says we should help people when we can, but she also says we have to take care of ourselves first, like putting on our own oxygen mask before helping others. Mia frowned. I don't really understand the oxygen mask part, but I think she means we shouldn't forget about our own family when we're helping strangers. Logan wondered when his 9-year-old daughter had become wise enough to see through him. You're right, he said, and I promise I'm not forgetting about you. But sometimes we have a chance to do something that matters, something bigger than just us. And if we don't take that chance when it comes, we might regret it forever. Mia considered this. Are you going to regret it if it doesn't work? Probably, but I'd regret not trying even more. She nodded, satisfied with this logic. Okay, but you have to come home tonight. We're supposed to finish our book. They were reading through a fantasy series together, one chapter each night before bed. They'd been on chapter 12 for almost a week because Logan kept missing bedtime. I'll be home, he promised, even if I have to leave work early. Promise, promise? Promise, promise. Mia hugged him tight, then went to get ready for school. Logan made her breakfast, walked her to the bus stop, watched her climb aboard with her too heavy backpack. She waved from the window. He waved back. Then he went inside, put on his one good shirt, and drove back to the financial tower to find out if courage mattered more than convenience. Susan Chen was waiting when he arrived at 9. Conference room A, she said. Ms. Brooks is already there with the board. She's presenting without me? She's prepping them. You're the closer. Susan handed him a tablet. Your presentation is loaded. 15 slides. Ms. Brooks built them based on your analysis. Don't deviate from the structure. She needs you to reinforce her narrative, not introduce new arguments. Logan's hands were sweating. Has she told them what this is about? She told them she's requesting a delay on the Meridian signing to present an alternative structure. Mr. Westfield, he's the chairman, was not pleased. Great. Mr. Pierce? Susan's voice stopped him as he turned toward the conference room. Ms. Brooks doesn't usually ask for help. The fact that she brought you in means she trusts your judgment. Don't make her regret it. Everyone keeps saying that. Because the stakes are higher than you realize. If this goes wrong, it's not just the deal. It's her credibility, her authority, her ability to lead this company. Some members of the board are already questioning whether she's too young, too inexperienced, too emotional to make hard business decisions. If they think she's going soft, Susan didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Logan walked into conference room A. The board was smaller than he'd expected, 9 people instead of the 40-plus who'd filled the signing ceremony. These were the real decision makers, 7 men and 2 women, most of them over 50, all of them radiating the particular confidence that came from having significant money and power. They sat around a long table, and every eye turned to Logan as he entered. Elena stood at the head of the table. She'd changed clothes, fresh suit, perfect hair, all traces of exhaustion hidden behind professional armor. But Logan caught the slight tightness around her eyes. She was nervous. Mr. Pierce, thank you for joining us. Her voice was formal, controlled. Everyone, this is Logan Pierce, the analyst who brought certain concerns to my attention regarding the Meridian acquisition structure. The janitor, you mean, said an older man with silver hair and a hard expression. This had to be Westfield. Former senior analyst at Carmichael Associates, Elena corrected smoothly, with specific expertise in acquisition modeling and risk assessment. Mr. Pierce, please walk the board through your alternative proposal. Logan moved to the front of the room and connected the tablet to the display screen. His first slide appeared. A simple title. Meridian Acquisition, Risk-Adjusted Alternative Structure. He took a breath and began. The current acquisition model projects $847 million in savings over 5 years, achieved primarily through workforce reduction and operational consolidation. However, this model carries significant execution risk that hasn't been adequately quantified. He advanced to the next slide, the Monte Carlo simulation results. Using historical data from comparable transactions, I've run 10,000 probabilistic simulations of the projected outcomes. While the base case shows strong returns, the median outcome is significantly lower. More concerning, there's a 27% probability of actual value destruction. One of the board members, a woman in her 60s with sharp features, leaned forward. You're suggesting our analysis is flawed? I'm suggesting it's optimistic without adequate risk adjustment. We paid a top consulting firm $2 million for that analysis, Westfield said coldly. And they delivered exactly what they were paid to deliver, a model that justifies the transaction you wanted to make. That doesn't mean it's accurate. The room went very quiet. Logan advanced to the next slide. The alternative structure I'm proposing achieves 60% of the projected savings with 30% of the execution risk. It requires higher initial capital investment, but delivers more stable long-term returns and significantly lower probability of catastrophic failure. He walked them through it systematically. Every slide, every assumption, every calculation. He could feel their skepticism like a physical weight, but he kept going. This was what he knew how to do. Make numbers tell a story. Build a case that logic couldn't easily dismiss. When he finished, Westfield spoke first. This is extremely conservative. You're essentially asking us to accept lower returns for the sake of preserving jobs that may not be economically viable. I'm asking you to accept more realistic returns for the sake of building a stable, sustainable company. Mr. Pierce, I appreciate your passion, but you're operating from an incomplete understanding of our strategic objectives. Westfield turned to Elena. Ms. Brooks, I assume you've reviewed this analysis. What's your assessment? This was the moment. Logan watched Elena, saw her take a barely perceptible breath. I think Mr. Pierce is right, she said clearly. I think our original model was aggressive to the point of recklessness, and I think we were so focused on impressive headline numbers that we failed to adequately assess the risks we were taking. The room erupted. Westfield's face went red. Elena, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. We've been so focused on beating last quarter's numbers that we stopped asking whether we were making sound decisions. Elena's voice was steady, but Logan could see her hands gripping the edge of the table. Mr. Pierce's analysis exposed flaws in our methodology that we should have caught ourselves. This is insane, said another board member, a younger man in an expensive suit. We've spent 6 months negotiating this deal. The press release is written. Meridian's board has already approved. And you want to blow it up because some janitor with a grudge walked in off the street? He's not some janitor, Elena said sharply. He's a trained analyst who identified real problems with our projections. Problems that could cost this company hundreds of millions if we ignore them. Or he's a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind who's manipulated you into second-guessing a sound business decision. The younger man looked at Logan with open contempt. Where were you 3 years ago, Mr. Pierce? Oh, right, you quit the industry. Walked away because you couldn't handle the pressure. And now you're back, trying to sabotage a deal you don't understand because it makes you feel important. Logan felt heat rising in his chest. I understand it better than you think. Really? Then explain to me how preserving jobs that aren't economically viable serves anyone's interests. Those positions are redundant. Keeping them doesn't help those workers. It just delays the inevitable while dragging down the entire company. Those positions are only redundant in your model. Change the assumptions and they become valuable capacity that gives you operational flexibility. Assumptions based on what? Your gut feeling? Your moral superiority? The younger man leaned forward. I've looked at your background, Mr. Pierce. Solid analyst, decent track record. Nothing exceptional. You worked on mid-market deals for a second-tier firm. This is a billion-dollar transaction involving complex strategic considerations that are frankly beyond your experience level. Thomas, that's enough, the older woman said. No, it's not enough. We're about to make a catastrophic mistake based on analysis from someone who's been out of the game for 3 years. Thomas turned to Elena. With all due respect, Ms. Brooks, I think this man has played on your sympathies. This isn't about rigorous analysis. It's about him working through his own guilt by projecting it onto you. Logan opened his mouth to respond, but Elena beat him to it. Actually, Thomas, Mr. Pierce's analysis is more rigorous than anything our consulting firm provided. He identified specific methodological flaws, quantified the risk exposure, and built a probabilistic model that accounts for historical volatility. That's not projection. That's competent financial analysis. It's conservative analysis that prioritizes risk avoidance over growth, Westfield said. Elena, your father didn't build this company by playing it safe. He took calculated risks, big risks. That's how you create value. My father also didn't bet the company on deals held together with optimistic assumptions and prayer. Elena's voice had an edge now. I've reviewed every major acquisition Brooks Industries has completed in the last 15 years. You want to know what I found? Our actual returns have averaged 38% below projections. 38%. We consistently overestimate the benefits and underestimate the costs. That's the nature of acquisitions, another board member said. No one gets it exactly right. But we're not even close. And this deal is structured the same way. Aggressive projections, minimal risk adjustment, and an execution plan that requires everything to go perfectly. When has anything in business ever gone perfectly? The room fell into tense silence. Logan watched the board members exchange glances, saw the calculations happening behind their eyes. Elena had put them in an impossible position. If they pushed forward with the original deal and it failed, they'd look reckless. But if they backed down now, they'd look weak. Westfield was the first to speak, and his voice was dangerously calm. Elena, I appreciate your diligence in reviewing Mr. Pierce's concerns, but I think you're overreacting to his personal trauma. The man is clearly still processing. Don't. Elena cut him off. Don't patronize me by suggesting I can't evaluate analysis objectively. And don't dismiss legitimate concerns by armchair diagnosing the person who raised them. I'm not dismissing anything. I'm questioning your judgment. Westfield's tone hardened. Your father put me on this board because he trusted me to provide guidance when needed. Right now you need guidance. You're 29 years old. You've been CEO for 18 months. You've done excellent work, but you're still learning. And sometimes that means recognizing when you're out of your depth. Logan saw Elena's jaw clench, saw the flash of hurt quickly buried under anger. I'm not out of my depth. I'm trying to prevent this company from making a mistake that could take years to recover from. By listening to a janitor over the board of directors, over professional consultants, over your own executive team? Westfield shook his head. Elena, if you push this, you're going to lose. The other board members and I have discussed this. We're prepared to move forward with the original deal with or without your approval. You can't do that. I'm the CEO, and you're CEO at our discretion. The board has the authority to override you if we believe you're acting against the company's interests. And right now, delaying a major acquisition based on questionable analysis from an unqualified source qualifies. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Elena stood very still, and Logan realized with growing horror that this was exactly what Westfield had been building toward. This wasn't about the deal anymore. It was about power, about putting Elena in her place, about making sure she understood who really controlled the company. So that's it then. Elena's voice was quiet. Fall in line or be removed. We're hoping it doesn't come to that. We're hoping you'll recognize that we're trying to help you avoid a serious error in judgment. Logan couldn't stay silent anymore. This isn't an error in judgment. The analysis is sound. The risk assessment is accurate. If you'd actually look at the numbers instead of treating this like a test of loyalty, Mr. Pierce, you're not a member of this board. You have no standing here. Westfield didn't even look at him. Elena, we need your answer. Are you going to sign the original deal, or do we need to have a different conversation about the future of your role at this company? Logan watched Elena's face, saw her fighting with herself. This was her father's company, the thing he'd built from nothing, the thing he'd asked her to protect. If she lost it now, lost her position, what would that mean? What would her father think? But then Logan saw something shift in her expression, a kind of clarity settling in. She looked at Westfield, then at the other board members, then finally at Logan. I need to think, she said. Give me the rest of the day. The signing ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Thomas said. We've already pushed it back once. Meridian's board is getting nervous. If we delay again... One day, Elena repeated. That's what I'm asking for. 12 hours to make sure we're making the right decision. Westfield studied her for a long moment. Fine. We reconvene tomorrow morning at 8. You'll either sign the original agreement or tender your resignation. Those are the only two options on the table. Elena nodded once, then walked out of the conference room without another word. Logan followed her into the hallway. She was moving fast, her heels clicking against the marble floor. He caught up with her at the elevator. Elena, not here. She jabbed the button. The elevator arrived and they stepped inside. Elena hit the button for the executive floor and leaned against the wall, eyes closed. Logan waited until they were in her office with the door closed before speaking. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you in that position. You didn't put me anywhere. I chose this. She crossed to the window and stared out at the city. I knew Westfield would push back. I just didn't think he'd threaten to remove me. He's bluffing. Maybe, maybe not. He and my father had a complicated relationship. Westfield was one of the original investors. He's been on the board since the beginning. He thinks he knows what's best for this company, and he definitely thinks he knows better than me. What are you going to do? Elena turned to face him. Honestly? I don't know. If I back down, I lose credibility. I become the CEO who can be bullied into submission, but if I push forward, I might lose everything. My position, my ability to protect my father's legacy, all of it. Your father didn't build a legacy by making choices other people told him to make. My father had 30 years to build trust and authority. I've had 18 months. It's not the same. Logan moved closer. What do you believe is the right choice? Forget the board. Forget the consequences. What does your gut tell you? Elena was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I think the original deal is wrong. I think we're about to hurt thousands of people for the sake of impressing shareholders with one quarter's numbers. I think my father would be ashamed of me for even considering it. Then don't sign it and throw away everything I've worked for, everything he trusted me to protect. You're not throwing it away. You're protecting it from people who want to turn it into something your father never intended. Elena laughed bitterly. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest choice you'll ever make, but it's also the only choice that lets you look at yourself in the mirror. She studied his face. You really believe that, don't you? Even after everything it cost you. Especially after everything it cost me. Because at least I can sleep at night. Elena walked back to her desk and sat down heavily. She looked exhausted, younger than her 29 years. I need to call my father. He deserves to know what's happening. Can he still communicate? Sometimes. The stroke affected his speech, but his mind is mostly clear. He gets frustrated when he can't find the words, but he understands everything. She picked up her phone, then set it down again. What if he thinks I'm making a mistake? What if he agrees with Westfield? Then at least you'll know. But Elena, you can't make this decision based on what other people think. Not the board, not your father, not me. You have to own it yourself. She nodded slowly, then picked up the phone and dialed. Logan moved toward the door to give her privacy, but Elena shook her head. Stay. The call connected. Logan heard a woman's voice, a nurse probably, then shuffling sounds. Hi, Dad. Elena's voice softened. It's me. Yeah, I know it's the middle of the day. Something came up. She paused, listening. No, nothing's wrong with my health. It's about the company, the Meridian acquisition. More silence. Logan watched Elena's face as she listened to her father's halting speech. I know you were excited about it, but I've discovered some problems with the deal structure. The projected savings are dependent on eliminating almost 3,000 jobs, and the risk analysis shows a high probability of the returns not materializing. Another pause. Dad, I'm serious. The numbers don't work the way we thought. Elena's expression changed. What do you mean? What does my gut say? This isn't about gut feelings, it's about rigorous analysis. She listened for a moment, then laughed, a real laugh that transformed her face. Okay, fine. My gut says it's wrong. My gut says we're about to hurt a lot of people for the wrong reasons. Logan could hear the murmur of her father's voice through the phone, though he couldn't make out the words. Westfield said, I'm out of my depth. Said the board will override me if I don't sign. Elena's voice cracked slightly. Dad, they're threatening to remove me. If I push this, I might lose everything. Whatever her father said next made Elena go very still. Tears started sliding down her face, though she didn't make a sound. I know you would. She wiped at her eyes impatiently. But this is your company, your legacy. If I lose it because I'm too stubborn to compromise. She stopped, listening. Okay, I hear you. More tears. I love you too, Dad. I'll call you tomorrow. She ended the call and sat there for a moment, not looking at Logan. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady despite the tears. He said the company isn't his legacy. I am. And he said if I let other people's fear turn me into someone who values money more than people, then the company isn't worth saving anyway. Logan felt something tighten in his chest. Sounds like a smart man. He also said that Westfield is full of it and always has been. Elena laughed and cried at the same time. Apparently they've been fighting about this stuff for 30 years. Dad wanted to build something that lasted. Westfield just wanted to get rich. What are you going to do? Elena stood and walked to her desk drawer. She pulled out a folder and opened it, revealing a single sheet of paper. Her resignation letter, Logan realized. She must have drafted it weeks ago, maybe months. A contingency plan for if things went wrong. She stared at it for a long moment, then tore it in half. I'm going to fight, she said. Tomorrow morning, I'm walking into that board meeting and telling Westfield exactly where he can shove his ultimatum. And then I'm going to expose the real problem with this deal. What real problem? Elena's expression turned sharp. While you were building your risk analysis, I did some digging of my own, called in a few favors from my time at Goldman, and I found something interesting about the consulting firm that prepared our original model. What? They're partially owned by Meridian Capital Group's largest shareholder, who is also on our board. Logan felt his pulse spike. Thomas Reeves. He's been pushing this deal hard because if it goes through, the consulting firm gets their fee, Meridian's shareholders get their payout, and Thomas personally makes about $40 million. He's not acting in Brooks Industries' interest. He's acting in his own. That's a massive conflict of interest. That's fraud. Elena's voice was cold. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to lay it all out in front of the entire board. Either they back my alternative structure, or I go public with what Thomas has been doing. I'll call the SEC, the Wall Street Journal, every regulatory agency I can think of. I'll burn it all down before I let them force me to sign a corrupt deal. Logan stared at her. This was not the controlled, calculating CEO from yesterday. This was someone who'd been backed into a corner and decided to come out swinging. Elena, if you do that, you won't just lose your job. You'll make enemies who could destroy your career. People like Thomas, don't forget. I don't care. She met his eyes. You were right. Some choices are worth the cost. And I'd rather lose everything fighting for something I believe in than keep everything by compromising who I am. Before Logan could respond, Elena's office door burst open. Susan Chen stood there, her face pale. Ms. Brooks, we have a problem. Building security just called. There are FBI agents in the lobby asking for you. The color drained from Elena's face. FBI? Why? They wouldn't say, but they have a warrant for your arrest. Logan's stomach dropped. This was happening too fast, spinning out of control. Elena looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw real fear in her eyes. What did I haven't done anything. It's not you, Logan said, and even as the words left his mouth, he knew. The documents, the confidential files he'd copied, someone had found out. It's me. They're coming for me. On what grounds? Corporate espionage, theft of trade secrets. I accessed confidential files without authorization, made copies, distributed them. That's a federal crime. Susan's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went even paler. They're asking for Logan Pierce as well. There are 2 warrants. Elena turned to Logan. Did Thomas do this? Is this him trying to shut us down before we can expose him? I don't know. Maybe. But it doesn't matter. If the FBI has warrants, they have probable cause. Someone filed a complaint, provided evidence. This is real. The phone on Elena's desk rang. She picked it up. What? No, absolutely not. Tell them. She stopped, listening. Her hand tightened on the receiver. I understand. Yes. We'll be right down. She hung up and looked at Susan. Call Richard Moss. Tell him I need the best criminal defense attorney he knows. Actually, tell him I need 2, and tell him to meet us at the Federal Building downtown. Ms. Brooks, if you're arrested, then we deal with it. But I'm not letting Logan face this alone. Elena grabbed her purse and turned to Logan. Do you have a lawyer? I have a public defender's number from when I got a parking ticket 3 years ago. That's not going to cut it. You're using my attorney. Don't argue, she added as Logan opened his mouth. This is my fault as much as yours. I gave you access to those files. You gave me access after I'd already stolen the originals. Details. Come on. Let's go face the music. They rode the elevator down in silence. Logan's mind was racing. If he was arrested, what happened to Mia? Mrs. Ramirez could keep her for a night, maybe 2. But then what? Foster care? He'd fought so hard to keep her safe, to give her stability, and now he'd destroyed it all because he couldn't let go of his need to save people who didn't even know he existed. The lobby was full of suits and stern faces. 2 FBI agents stepped forward as Elena and Logan approached. The taller one, a woman with short gray hair, held up her badge. Elena Brooks and Logan Pierce? That's us, Elena said. I'm Special Agent Morrison. You're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, theft of trade secrets, and wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Wait, Logan interrupted. Corporate fraud? I stole documents, yes, but I didn't commit fraud. You accessed confidential financial information with intent to manipulate a corporate transaction for personal gain. Morrison's voice was flat, professional. That meets the legal definition of fraud. Personal gain? I'm a janitor. What possible? Mr. Pierce, I strongly suggest you stop talking. This came from a man in an expensive suit who just entered the lobby. He walked directly to Elena and extended his hand. Richard Moss. Ms. Brooks, I got Susan's message. This is Marcus Chen, one of the best criminal defense attorneys in the state. He'll be representing Mr. Pierce. Marcus was younger than Logan expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the kind of confidence that came from winning cases other people thought were unwinnable. Don't say another word, Marcus told Logan. Not one word. Not to the agents, not to anyone. Understood? Logan nodded. Morrison continued reading them their rights. Other agents stepped forward with handcuffs. Logan felt the metal close around his wrists and fought down a wave of panic. This was real. This was actually happening. As they were being led toward the doors, Logan caught sight of someone standing near the elevators. Thomas Reeves, watching with a small, satisfied smile. Their eyes met across the lobby, and Thomas raised his phone in a small salute. He'd made a call. Probably to a contact at the FBI, probably feeding them a carefully constructed narrative about two people conspiring to sabotage a major acquisition for their own benefit. Logan wanted to scream at him, to expose what he'd done, but Marcus's hand was on his arm, steering him forward. Don't react. Don't give them anything they can use. Outside, news vans were already gathering. Someone had tipped off the press. Of course they had. This wasn't just about stopping Elena and Logan. This was about destroying them publicly, making sure everyone knew what happened to people who challenged the system. Cameras flashed as they were led to separate FBI vehicles. Logan caught one last glimpse of Elena before they pushed him into the back seat. She looked terrified but defiant, her chin raised even as an agent guided her into another car. Then the door closed and they were moving, and Logan sat in handcuffs watching the city slide past the window, wondering how he'd ended up here and whether Mia would ever forgive him for breaking his promise to come home. The interrogation room was exactly like the ones on television. Gray walls, metal table, chairs bolted to the floor, and a mirror that was obviously a window. Logan sat with his hands cuffed in front of him, Marcus Chen beside him, in a chair that seemed too small for the situation they were in. Agent Morrison sat across from them with a younger agent Logan didn't recognize. Between them lay a folder stuffed with documents. Logan recognized some of them. His copied files, printouts of the analysis he'd built. Evidence. Mr. Pierce, let's make this simple, Morrison said. We have documentation showing that you accessed Brooks Industries' confidential servers without authorization on multiple occasions over the past week. We have copies of proprietary financial models that you removed from the premises. And we have testimony from several Brooks Industries executives stating that you used this stolen information to manipulate CEO Elena Brooks into delaying a major corporate transaction. That's not what happened, Logan said. Marcus put a hand on his arm. Don't. But it's not true. I didn't manipulate anyone. I showed her that the deal had problems. Logan. Marcus's voice was sharp. Stop talking. Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Pierce, I understand you think you were doing the right thing. Whistleblowers often do. But the law is very clear about how confidential corporate information can be accessed and used. You violated that law multiple times. The question now is whether you acted alone or as part of a broader conspiracy with Ms. Brooks. Elena didn't know anything about the documents until I showed them to her. So you're saying you acted independently to steal trade secrets, then approached the CEO with the intent to influence her decision-making regarding a billion-dollar transaction. Morrison pulled out another document. That's still corporate espionage, Mr. Pierce. And given the dollar amounts involved, we're looking at serious federal charges. Marcus cut in. Agent Morrison, unless you're prepared to charge my client right now, this conversation is over. You have circumstantial evidence of unauthorized access, but nothing that demonstrates criminal intent. Mr. Pierce believed he was exposing legitimate problems with a corporate transaction. That's protected whistleblower activity. Whistleblowers go through proper channels. They don't steal documents and orchestrate public confrontations designed to sabotage business deals. He didn't sabotage anything. He presented factual analysis that revealed flaws in the proposed transaction structure, analysis built on stolen data. Morrison turned back to Logan. Here's what I think happened. I think you saw an opportunity. You're a janitor making barely above minimum wage, cleaning the offices of people who make more in a day than you make in a year. That has to sting. So when you stumbled across those documents, you saw a chance to matter, to be important, to make the powerful people notice you. Logan's jaw clenched. That's not... And then you met Elena Brooks, young, beautiful, rich, running her father's company. Maybe you thought if you helped her, she'd be grateful. Maybe you thought she'd reward you somehow. A job, money, attention. So you manipulated her with carefully selected information, convinced her to doubt her own judgment, and positioned yourself as her savior. That's complete nonsense, Marcus said. You're constructing a narrative with zero evidence. We have his employment records. 3 years as a janitor after washing out of the finance industry. We have testimony that he crashed a board meeting and publicly embarrassed Ms. Brooks in front of her investors. We have evidence of late-night meetings between them in empty conference rooms. And we have a corporate transaction that was supposed to close today but didn't because of his interference. Morrison slid a photograph across the table. It showed Logan and Elena in conference room B leaning over the laptop together. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. That looks pretty cozy for a janitor and a CEO having a strictly professional discussion about financial models. Heat rushed to Logan's face. We were working. She asked me to help her review the deal structure, after you'd already stolen the confidential information that made her doubt the deal in the first place. You created the problem, then offered yourself as the solution. Classic manipulation. Agent Morrison, Marcus said coldly, if you're insinuating some kind of romantic entanglement as a motive, you're really reaching. And if you're trying to get my client to incriminate himself with defensive explanations, it's not going to work. Either charge him or release him. Morrison studied Logan for a long moment. We're charging both of you. The U.S. Attorney is preparing the formal indictment now. Corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud. You're looking at 10 to 15 years, Mr. Pierce. The number hit Logan like a physical blow. 10 to 15 years. Mia would be in her 20s by the time he got out. He'd miss her entire childhood, every birthday, every school play, every milestone. She'd grow up without him. However, Morrison continued, there may be an opportunity to reduce your exposure, if you're willing to cooperate. Don't answer that, Marcus said immediately. Cooperate how? Logan asked. Marcus shot him a warning look, but Logan ignored it. If there was a chance to protect Mia, to not lose everything, he had to know. Tell us the truth about Elena Brooks' involvement. Was this her idea? Did she ask you to access those files? Did she promise you anything in exchange for helping her delay the Meridian deal? No. None of that happened. Think carefully, Mr. Pierce. Right now, we're treating you as co-conspirators. Equal blame, equal penalties. But if you were actually a victim here, if Miss Brooks manipulated you into stealing those documents for her benefit, then you might qualify for a cooperation agreement. Reduce charges, possibly immunity, in exchange for truthful testimony. Logan stared at Morrison. You want me to lie and say Elena made me do it? I want you to tell the truth about what happened. The truth is that I acted alone. Elena didn't know anything about the documents until I showed them to her. She didn't ask me to steal anything. She didn't manipulate me. She gave me a chance to prove my analysis was sound. And when I did, she took it seriously. That's all that happened. Morrison sighed. Then you're going to prison, Mr. Pierce. Both of you. And your daughter is going to grow up in foster care while you serve a decade behind bars. Is protecting Elena Brooks really worth that? Logan felt something crack inside his chest. The image of Mia alone, scared, being passed between strangers who didn't know that she liked her sandwiches cut diagonally, or that she needed her nightlight on, or that she still sometimes had nightmares about the car accident that killed her mother. Logan, don't, Marcus said quietly. They're trying to break you. Don't let them. My daughter needs me. And lying won't help her. It'll just make everything worse. Morrison leaned back. I'll give you some time to think about it. Talk to your lawyer. Consider what's best for your family. We'll speak again soon. The agents left. Marcus and Logan sat in silence for a moment. They don't have much, Marcus said finally. If they did, they wouldn't be trying so hard to flip you. The case against you is mostly circumstantial. Unauthorized access, yes, but proving criminal intent is harder. And the conspiracy charge is even weaker. They're hoping you'll panic and give them something substantial. What about Elena? Her case is different. She's the CEO. She had the authority to delay the deal for any reason she wanted. The fact that she did so based on your analysis doesn't make her a criminal. But if you testify that she asked you to steal those documents, Marcus shook his head, then they've got her. And they'll use her high-profile prosecution to send a message about corporate governance and insider trading. I'm not going to lie about her. Good. Because even if you did, it wouldn't save you. They'd use your testimony to convict her, then prosecute you anyway for the theft. You'd just be a liar going to prison instead of an honest man going to prison. Logan laughed bitterly. Those are my options? No, your option is to fight. Let me do my job. I've handled cases like this before. Federal prosecutors like to throw around big charges to scare people into pleading out. But when they actually have to prove criminal intent beyond a reasonable doubt, it's harder than they make it sound. How long will this take? Months, maybe a year. You'll be arraigned tomorrow, and if we can't make bail, which we probably can't given the dollar amounts involved, you'll be held pending trial. Months in jail. Unless Elena's attorney can work some magic. Richard Moss is connected. If anyone can get you released on your own recognizance, it's him. A guard opened the door. Time's up. Mr. Pierce, you're being transferred to federal holding. Marcus stood. I'll file motions first thing in the morning. And Logan, don't talk to anyone. Not other inmates, not guards, not FBI agents who want to chat. No one. Understand? Logan nodded. The guard cuffed him again and led him out of the interrogation room, down a hallway, and into a processing area. They took his photo, his fingerprints, his belt, and shoelaces. Gave him an orange jumpsuit and a plastic bag for his clothes. The whole process felt surreal, like it was happening to someone else. In the holding cell, Logan sat on a metal bench and stared at the wall. The cell smelled like disinfectant and desperation. 2 other men were there, one sleeping on the floor, one pacing near the bars. Neither looked at Logan. He thought about Mia. Wondered if Mrs. Ramirez had picked her up from school yet. Wondered what he was supposed to tell his 9-year-old daughter about why her father was in jail. Wondered if she'd ever forgive him. Hours passed. Logan lost track of time in the windowless cell. At some point, someone brought food, a sandwich that tasted like cardboard and a cup of water. Logan ate mechanically, his mind elsewhere. Finally, a guard called his name. Pierce, you made bail. Logan looked up, confused. What? Someone posted your bond. You're being released pending trial. Who? The guard shrugged. Didn't ask. Come on. They processed him out, returning his clothes and personal effects. Logan dressed in a daze, still not quite believing this was real. In the release area, Richard Moss was waiting. Mr. Pierce, Ms. Brooks asked me to arrange your release. She posted your bail herself. How much was it? $2 million. Logan nearly fell over. She paid $2 million to get me out? It's 10% in cash for the bond. Still a significant sum. She was quite insistent. Richard handed him a card. She's waiting outside. And Mr. Pierce? She's been released as well. I managed to convince the prosecutor that holding a CEO of a major corporation without substantial evidence would be politically problematic. They agreed to release her on her own recognizance. Outside, the evening air was cool. Logan took a deep breath, savoring the feeling of being free, even if it was temporary. Elena stood next to a black car, still in her business suit, looking exhausted and defiant. You shouldn't have done this, Logan said. Probably not, but I did anyway. Elena gestured to the car. Get in. We need to talk. They drove in silence for a while. Logan watched the city lights blur past the window, everything feeling distant and strange. They offered me a deal too, Elena said finally. Said if I testified that you acted without my knowledge, if I portrayed you as a rogue employee who I fired as soon as I discovered what you'd done, they'd drop the charges against me. Logan's stomach twisted. What did you say? I told them to go to hell. Elena's voice was hard. They're trying to divide us. Make us turn on each other. Classic prosecution tactic. But I'm not playing that game. Elena, you should take the deal. Your career, your company, everything you've built. is worthless if I have to destroy someone who was trying to help me in order to keep it. She turned to look at him. Logan, you risked everything to show me the truth. You knew you'd probably get caught, knew you could go to jail, and you did it anyway because you believed it was right. You think I'm going to throw you under the bus now to save myself? It would be smart. Smart is overrated. Elena smiled without humor. Besides, I did some digging while you were being interrogated. Found out some interesting things about how this arrest happened. Thomas. Not just Thomas. He filed the FBI complaint, yes, but he had help. Westfield provided a sworn statement saying that he'd witnessed you and me conspiring to sabotage the Meridian deal. He claimed I'd told him explicitly that I was delaying the signing because you'd convinced me there were problems. Did you tell him that? I told him I had concerns about the deal structure. I never mentioned your name, but he twisted it into a conspiracy narrative and fed it to the FBI with Thomas backing him up. Elena's expression turned cold. They're trying to remove me from the company and put you in prison. 2 problems solved with 1 manufactured crisis. What are we going to do? Fight back. I've called an emergency shareholders meeting for tomorrow morning. Full disclosure. I'm going to present everything. Your analysis, Thomas's conflict of interest, Westfield's lies to federal investigators, all of it. Let the shareholders decide who they trust. Elena, if you do that, you're burning every bridge. Even if you win, you'll have made enemies who will spend years trying to destroy you. I know. She looked out the window. But I'm tired of playing politics. Tired of pretending that the rules are fair when they're rigged by people like Thomas and Westfield. I'd rather go down fighting for what's right than win by becoming what I hate. The car pulled up in front of Logan's apartment building. It looked shabby compared to the financial tower, paint peeling on the facade, one of the security lights flickering. This is you, Elena said. Logan didn't move. Why are you doing this, really? It can't just be about the deal. Elena was quiet for a moment. Do you know what it's like to spend your entire life trying to prove you deserve something? My father built an empire, and everyone assumed I got my position because of his name. Not because I was qualified, not because I was smart or capable, just because I was his daughter. She turned to face him. And maybe they were right. Maybe I was playing a role I thought I was supposed to play, the ruthless CEO who makes hard choices and doesn't flinch. But then you walked into that boardroom and called me out. Showed me that the hard choices I was making were just easy cruelty dressed up as business strategy. I didn't mean to. You did me a favor. You reminded me that there's a difference between being strong and being heartless, and that the legacy worth protecting isn't the company, it's the values my father actually believed in. Elena smiled sadly. So yeah, I'm burning bridges, because the alternative is becoming someone I don't recognize. Logan opened the car door, then paused. The shareholders' meeting tomorrow. You're going to need evidence. Documents proving Thomas's conflict of interest, Westfield's lies, all of it. I have most of it. Richard's team has been pulling records all day. But you don't have the one thing that matters most. You don't have proof that the original deal was structured to benefit Thomas personally rather than the company. How would we even get that? Logan thought for a moment. The consulting firm that prepared your financial model. If they're partially owned by Meridian's largest shareholder, there will be a paper trail, ownership documents, fee agreements, communications between Thomas and the consultants. It'll all be in their files, which we don't have access to. No, but I know someone who might. Logan pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for. Martinez, his old colleague from Carmichael Associates, the one who now worked at the Chicago plant that was scheduled for closure. He dialed. It rang 4 times before Martinez answered. Logan? Man, I haven't heard from you in forever. What's up? I need a favor, a big one, and I need it fast. Okay, what kind of favor? Remember how you used to complain about the consulting firms that would come in and recommend mass layoffs without understanding the actual operations? Every day of my life, why? How would you feel about helping me expose one of those firms for fraud? There was a long pause. I'm listening. Logan explained quickly. The Meridian deal, the projected layoffs, Thomas's conflict of interest, the consulting firm's biased analysis. Martinez listened without interrupting. So let me get this straight, Martinez said when Logan finished. You're saying this whole acquisition that's supposed to shut down my plant is actually a scam to make some board member rich? That's exactly what I'm saying. And you want me to help you prove it. If we can get documentation from the consulting firm showing that they knowingly provided biased analysis to benefit their partial owner, we can prove the entire deal is corrupt. But I need someone who understands how these firms operate, someone who knows what to look for. I'm a plant manager, Logan, not an investigator. You're a plant manager who's about to lose his job because of this deal. And you're one of the smartest operational guys I know. If anyone can reverse engineer their analysis and identify the flaws, it's you. Martinez was quiet for a moment. What do you need? Access to their financial model. The full version, not the summary they presented to Brooks Industries. There should be working files, email chains between Thomas and the consulting team, maybe even explicit instructions about how to structure the projections. And how am I supposed to get that? You're not. But I know someone who can. Logan looked at Elena. Do you still have contacts at Goldman Sachs? Several. Why? Because one of them probably knows someone at the consulting firm. And if we can get access to their servers, just read access, just long enough to pull the relevant files, we might be able to prove what Thomas did. Elena's eyes widened. You want to hack a consulting firm? I want to legally subpoena their records through proper channels with appropriate authorization. Logan paused. But if that takes too long, then yes, I want to hack a consulting firm. Elena laughed, a real laugh this time. You know we're already facing federal charges, right? You want to add unauthorized computer access to the list? I want to win. Everything else is just details. She studied his face for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. I'll make some calls. Martinez, you still there? Yeah, and for the record, I like this plan. My wife is going to kill me, but I like it. Good. Stand by for instructions. Logan will coordinate with you. Elena ended the call and started dialing another number. This is insane. You know that, right? Completely. And if we get caught, we'll definitely go to prison. Probably. And even if we succeed, there's no guarantee the shareholders will side with us tomorrow. True, Elena smiled. Okay, let's do it. Logan climbed out of the car and headed into his building. Mrs. Ramirez's door opened as he approached his apartment. Logan, thank goodness, I was so worried. The news said you were arrested. She lowered her voice. Mia saw it on television. She's very upset. Logan's heart sank. Is she okay? She's scared, confused. I told her there must be some mistake, that her father would never do anything wrong. But Logan, you need to talk to her. I will. Thank you for watching her. Mrs. Ramirez touched his arm. Whatever trouble you're in, I hope you can fix it. That little girl needs you. I know. Inside the apartment, Mia was sitting on the couch in her pajamas, hugging her knees to her chest. She looked up when Logan entered and her face crumpled. Daddy! She launched herself at him and Logan caught her, holding on tight. She was crying, her small body shaking with sobs. It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here. I'm here. The TV said you were arrested. They said you stole things. They showed you in handcuffs. Her voice was muffled against his shoulder. Why did they say that? Logan carried her to the couch and sat down, keeping her in his lap. Because I did something that was against the rules, but I did it for a good reason. What reason? How did he explain this to a 9-year-old? How did he make her understand that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the wrong rules? Remember how we talked about my old job? How I used to work with numbers and help companies make decisions? Mia nodded against his chest. Well, I found out that some people were going to make a decision that would hurt a lot of families. People would lose their jobs, and their kids wouldn't have enough money for food or school or houses. So I tried to stop it. By stealing? By showing other people information they needed to see. Information that was secret. And yes, I wasn't supposed to look at it. But if I hadn't, those families would have been hurt, and no one would have known why. Mia pulled back to look at his face. Her eyes were red from crying. Are you going to jail? I don't know yet. Maybe. But I'm going to try very hard to fix this. Will I have to live somewhere else? The question broke his heart. I hope not, sweetheart. But if something happens to me, Mrs. Ramirez said she would take care of you until we figure things out. And I have some friends who are going to help me make sure you're safe no matter what. I don't want to live somewhere else. I want to stay with you. I want that too, more than anything. Logan hugged her tight. But Mia, I need you to understand something. Sometimes grown-ups have to make really hard choices, and sometimes those choices have consequences we don't like. I made a choice to try to help people, and now I have to deal with what happens because of it. Was it the right choice? Logan thought about the 3,000 people he'd never met, about Martinez and his family, about all the lives that hung in the balance of tomorrow's shareholders' meeting. Yes, I think it was. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then I'm proud of you, even if you have to go to jail. Logan felt tears on his own face now. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You know that? I know. She yawned. Daddy, I'm tired. Then let's get you to bed. He carried her to her room, tucked her in with her favorite stuffed animal, turned on her nightlight. She was asleep before he left the room, exhausted from crying and worry. Logan stood in her doorway watching her sleep, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way her hand curled around the stuffed bear. If tomorrow went wrong, this might be one of his last nights at home for a very long time. His phone buzzed, a text from Elena. Got the access we need. Martinez is standing by. Can you work through the night? Logan looked at his sleeping daughter one more time. Yes. Send me the details. He walked to the kitchen table and opened his laptop. Tomorrow morning, Elena would stand in front of the shareholders and fight for the soul of her father's company, and Logan would give her every piece of ammunition he could find, even if it meant risking everything he had left. Because Mia had said she was proud of him, and he'd be damned if he'd prove her wrong now. The files arrived at midnight. Logan sat at his kitchen table staring at spreadsheets while the city slept around him, his laptop screen the only light in the apartment. Elena's contact had come through. Someone at Goldman who knew someone at the consulting firm who owed someone a favor. The chain of connections that made the corporate world function, now being used to expose its corruption. Martinez called at 12:30. I'm looking at their revenue projections. Logan, this is garbage. What do you mean? They're using a growth rate of 23% for markets that have averaged 9% for the past decade. And they're applying it uniformly across all product lines, even the ones that are actually declining. No competent analyst would make these assumptions unless they were told to. Logan pulled up the same spreadsheet. Martinez was right. The projections were so optimistic they bordered on fiction. Keep digging. We need to find the communication between Thomas and the consulting team. Emails, memos, anything that shows he directed them to structure the analysis this way. On it. Logan worked through the night, building a forensic analysis of how the consulting firm had manipulated their projections. Every assumption that was inflated, every risk that was minimized, every number that was carefully chosen to justify eliminating as many jobs as possible while making the deal look attractive to shareholders. At 3 a.m., Martinez found it. Logan, check your email. I just forwarded you something. Logan opened his inbox. The email contained a scanned document, a memo from Thomas Reeves to the lead consultant dated 4 months earlier. Meridian Acquisition Analysis. Structural requirements. Need your team to model this with the following parameters. Minimum $800 million in projected savings to justify acquisition price. Savings should come primarily from workforce reduction to demonstrate operational efficiency. Integration timeline should be aggressive, under 18 months, to show decisive execution. Risk factors should be minimized in executive summary. I understand these targets are optimistic. That's intentional. We need the board excited about this deal. They've been too conservative lately, and I need them thinking bigger. Logan read it 3 times, his heart pounding. This was it. Explicit instructions from a board member to a consulting firm to manipulate their analysis to achieve a predetermined outcome. Not objective evaluation, predetermined conclusion dressed up as analysis. Martinez, you're a genius. I'm a guy who's about to lose his job and is very motivated. There's more. Look at the attachment. Logan clicked through. The attachment was a fee agreement between the consulting firm and Brooks Industries. Standard stuff, except for one clause buried in the appendix. If the Meridian acquisition closed successfully, the consulting firm would receive a success bonus of $15 million. And according to the ownership documents Martinez had also found, Thomas Reeves personally owned an 8% stake in the consulting firm through a shell company. 8% of $15 million was $1.2 million. on top of the stock gains he'd make when Meridian's shareholders got their payout. This is fraud, Logan said quietly. Straight up fraud. Yeah, and we're going to bury him with it. Logan spent the next 2 hours organizing everything into a presentation that even a non-financial person could understand. The inflated projections, the explicit instructions to manipulate the analysis, the financial incentives that created a massive conflict of interest, all of it documented, sourced, irrefutable. At 5:30, he emailed the complete package to Elena and Marcus. Then he took a shower, put on his one good suit, and checked on Mia. She was still sleeping, one arm flung over her head, her stuffed bear clutched in the other hand. Logan kissed her forehead gently, careful not to wake her. Mrs. Ramirez met him in the hallway. Big day? The biggest. I'll take Mia to school. You do what you need to do. Thank you for everything. Just come home safe, Logan. That little girl needs her father. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Logan arrived at the financial tower at 8 to find the lobby already packed with people. Shareholders, journalists, lawyers, employees who'd somehow heard what was happening and wanted to witness it. Security had set up checkpoints to verify credentials. Logan spotted Susan Chen near the elevators. She looked exhausted, like she'd been up all night too. Mr. Pierce? Ms. Brooks is already upstairs. She asked me to bring you up as soon as you arrived. They rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the 72nd floor, Logan could hear raised voices from the main conference room. The door was closed, but sound carried through the glass walls. Susan led him to a smaller office where Elena was pacing, her phone pressed to her ear. She wore a charcoal suit, and her hair was pulled back severely. War paint, Logan thought. She looked ready to fight. I don't care what the U.S. attorney thinks, Elena was saying into the phone. If he wants to file additional charges, he can do it after I've exposed the fraud that started this whole mess. Yes. Yes, I understand. Thank you, Richard. She ended the call and turned to Logan. Please tell me you found something. We found everything. Logan pulled up the presentation on his laptop. Thomas didn't just have a conflict of interest. He actively directed the consulting firm to manipulate their analysis to justify the deal. And he stood to make over $1 million personally from the success bonus. Elena's eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. This is exactly what we need. But Logan, how did you get these files? Do you really want to know? She considered for a moment. No, probably better if I don't. Plausible deniability and all that. Elena closed the laptop. The meeting starts in 15 minutes. Are you ready? Are you? No. I'm terrified. Half the shareholders think I'm incompetent for delaying the Meridian deal. The other half think I'm corrupt for even considering it. Westfield has been working the phones all week, building support to remove me. And Thomas has convinced several major investors that you and I are in some kind of conspiracy together. We kind of are, Logan pointed out. Elena laughed despite herself. Fair point, but we're conspiring to expose the truth, not hide it. That has to count for something. With some people, not with everyone. I know, which is why I need you in there with me. When I present this evidence, they're going to have questions. Technical questions about the financial analysis, the projections, the methodology. I can handle some of it, but you understand this stuff better than I do. Logan thought about walking into a room full of wealthy, powerful people who already thought he was a criminal. Thought about standing up there and defending analysis they'd probably dismiss as the desperate fabrications of someone trying to avoid prison. Okay, he said. Let's do this. They walked to the main conference room together. Inside, at least 60 people were seated around an expanded table configuration. Logan recognized some faces from the board meeting. Westfield at the head of the table, Thomas off to one side looking smug, the older woman who'd questioned Logan's analysis. The rest were major shareholders, their lawyers, a few journalists in the back row. Every conversation stopped when Elena entered. The room went silent. Thank you all for coming on short notice, Elena said, moving to the front of the room. I know many of you are frustrated by the delay in the Meridian acquisition. Some of you have called for my resignation. I understand. You invested in Brooks Industries because you expect strong leadership and decisive action. Over the past week, I've given you neither. Westfield leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He looked like a man who thought he'd already won. But before you make any final judgments, Elena continued, I need to show you what I discovered. Not just about the Meridian deal, but about the process that led us to consider it in the first place. She connected her laptop to the display screen. The first slide appeared, a simple title, The Real Cost of Project Streamline. The original Meridian acquisition projected $847 million in savings, achieved primarily through elimination of 2,800 positions. These projections were provided by Whitmore Consulting Group, a firm we paid $2 million to evaluate the deal. Elena advanced to the next slide. What we didn't know was that Whitmore has a significant conflict of interest. The slide showed the ownership structure of Whitmore Consulting. Thomas's shell company was highlighted in red. Thomas Reeves, a member of our board, owns 8% of Whitmore through Reeves Capital Holdings. This means that every dollar we pay Whitmore puts money directly into Thomas's pocket, and the fee agreement includes a $15 million success bonus if the Meridian deal closes. Murmurs rippled through the room. Thomas's face went pale, then red. That's a standard consulting arrangement, Thomas said loudly. Success bonuses incentivize quality work. They also create incentive to recommend whatever outcome pays the bonus, regardless of whether it's in the client's best interest. Elena advanced to the next slide, the memo from Thomas to Whitmore. Especially when the board member with the financial interest explicitly directs the consultants to structure their analysis to achieve a predetermined result. She read the memo aloud. The room erupted. "That's taken out of context," Thomas shouted over the noise. "I was providing strategic guidance, not directing them to commit fraud. You told them to minimize risk factors and inflate projections to excite the board. That's not strategic guidance. That's manipulation." Elena pulled up the next slide. Logan's comparison of Whitmore's projections versus historical performance. And it worked. Whitmore projected 23% growth in markets that have averaged 9%. They projected perfect execution on integration when our own history shows an average of 4 months delay and 8% cost overrun. They built a model designed to justify the outcome Thomas wanted, not to evaluate whether the outcome made business sense. "Ms. Brooks," Westfield said coldly, "these are serious accusations. Do you have any proof beyond the questionable analysis of a janitor who's currently facing federal charges for corporate espionage?" "Yes." Elena gestured to Logan. "And that janitor is a former senior analyst who identified flaws in our methodology that could have cost this company hundreds of millions. Mr. Pierce, please walk the shareholders through your alternative analysis." Logan stood and moved to the front of the room. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady when he spoke. The fundamental problem with the original Meridian model is that it confuses aggressive with realistic. The projections look impressive on paper, but they require everything to go perfectly. No market volatility, no integration problems, no quality control issues, no employee turnover, perfect execution across 24 months. Logan pulled up his Monte Carlo simulation. When you run probabilistic analysis using historical data, the likelihood of achieving the projected returns drops to 41%, and there's a 27% chance of actual value destruction. One of the shareholders spoke up. "But your alternative model shows lower returns. Why would we accept less money?" "Because you're also accepting less risk. The median outcome in my model is actually higher than the median outcome in the original model. Yes, the best case scenario isn't as exciting, but the worst case scenario doesn't bankrupt the company. And the jobs? This came from another shareholder. You're preserving positions that may not be economically viable long term. I'm preserving operational capacity that gives you flexibility. If market demand grows the way your own research suggests, you'll need that capacity. And keeping experienced workers costs less than shuttering facilities and then having to rebuild capability later when you realize you need it." "This is ridiculous," Thomas said. "We're letting a criminal who broke into our systems dictate corporate strategy based on his personal guilt about decisions he made years ago. His analysis is compromised by his emotional investment in saving jobs." "Actually," said a new voice from the doorway, "his analysis is mathematically sound and professionally executed." Everyone turned. An older man in a rumpled suit stood there holding a briefcase. Logan didn't recognize him, but Elena clearly did. "Professor Hartman," Elena said. "Thank you for coming." "Ms. Brooks asked me to review both financial models," Hartman said, walking to the front of the room. For those who don't know me, I teach corporate finance at Wharton, and I've consulted on over 200 major acquisitions. I've spent the past 3 days analyzing both the Whitmore model and Mr. Pierce's alternative. He pulled out a thick report and set it on the table. Mr. Pierce's methodology is superior in every measurable way. His risk adjustments are appropriate. His probability distributions are based on sound historical data. His conclusions are conservative but defensible. The Whitmore model, by contrast, contains several significant flaws that any competent analyst should have caught. Thomas stood abruptly. This is a setup. Elena brought in some professor to validate her predetermined conclusion. I brought in someone with actual expertise to provide an objective evaluation, Elena shot back, which is what should have happened before we ever considered this deal. Ms. Brooks, Westfield said, even if we accept that the original model was flawed, that doesn't explain why you're facing federal charges. The U.S. Attorney clearly believes you and Mr. Pierce conspired to manipulate this transaction for personal gain. The U.S. Attorney believes what Thomas and you told them. Elena's voice turned to ice. You filed a complaint claiming that Logan and I conspired to sabotage the Meridian deal. You provided a sworn statement saying I admitted to being manipulated by him. But that's not what happened, and you know it. I reported what I observed. You lied to federal investigators to remove me from my position and silence someone who was exposing your fraud. Elena pulled up another document. This is your sworn statement to the FBI. You claimed I told you explicitly that Mr. Pierce had convinced me to delay the signing, but I never said that. I told you I had concerns about the deal structure. You invented the conspiracy narrative to justify having us arrested. Westfield's expression didn't change. Your interpretation of our conversation differs from mine. Then let's get the recordings. Elena looked directly at him. Every conversation in this building is recorded for legal compliance, including our discussion in your office last Thursday. Shall we review the audio? Westfield went very still. Thomas looked like he was about to be sick. You're bluffing, Westfield said. Try me. The silence was absolute. Logan watched the two of them face off. Elena standing tall despite the exhaustion and fear that must have been eating her alive. Westfield calculating whether she actually had the recordings and what would happen if she played them. Finally, one of the other shareholders spoke. I move that we suspend the Meridian acquisition pending an independent review of both the Whitmore analysis and Mr. Pierce's alternative model. And I move that we launch an immediate investigation into the conflicts of interest raised by Ms. Brooks. Second, said another shareholder immediately. All in favor? Hands went up around the table. Logan counted quickly. More than 2/3 of the shareholders. Motion carries, the first shareholder said. Thomas, I think you should recuse yourself from any further involvement in this matter. Thomas stood without a word and walked out of the conference room, his face dark with rage. Westfield remained seated, but his expression was carved from stone. This isn't over, Elena. No, Elena agreed. It's not. Because I'm also moving to have you removed from the board for providing false testimony to federal investigators. And I'm turning over all the evidence we've gathered to the U.S. Attorney so they can see exactly who was actually committing fraud here. You're making a mistake. I'm fixing one. Elena looked around the room. This company was built by my father with the belief that business should create value for everyone, shareholders, employees, customers, communities. Not just extract maximum profit regardless of the human cost. If that's not the kind of company you want to invest in, I understand. You're welcome to sell your shares. But as long as I'm CEO, we're going to make decisions that balance financial returns with basic human decency. Another shareholder stood. She was older, probably in her 70s, and she looked at Elena with something like respect. Your father would be proud of you. Elena's eyes shone with tears she refused to let fall. Thank you. The meeting dissolved into smaller conversations. Some shareholders looked angry, others thoughtful. A few actually smiled at Elena as they left. Logan stood off to the side, watching it all unfold, still not quite believing they'd pulled it off. Professor Hartman approached him. Mr. Pierce, your analysis was excellent. If you're ever looking to return to the field, I know several firms that would be interested in someone with your skills. I appreciate that, but I think I'm done with corporate finance. Fair enough. Though for what it's worth, the field needs more people like you. People who remember that the numbers represent actual human lives. After Hartman left, Elena found Logan. We did it. We actually did it. You did it. I just provided the ammunition. We did it together. Elena's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and smiled. That's Richard. The U.S. attorney wants to meet. Apparently our evidence against Thomas is compelling enough that they're considering dropping the charges against us in exchange for our cooperation in prosecuting him. Will they actually drop them? Richard thinks so, especially now that we can show we were exposing fraud rather than committing it. Elena looked at Logan seriously. But even if they don't, even if we still end up fighting this in court, it was worth it. Because we stopped something wrong from happening. We protected people who couldn't protect themselves, and we did it the right way. Logan thought about Mia, about the promise he'd made to come home, about the possibility that he might still go to prison despite everything they'd accomplished. The right way doesn't always lead to the right outcome, he said quietly. No, but it lets you live with yourself afterward, and that matters. Susan Chen appeared in the doorway. Ms. Brooks, the press is asking for a statement, and there are about 20 journalists downstairs who want interviews. Elena took a deep breath. Okay, let's go face the cameras. Actually, Logan said, I think I'll skip the press conference. This is your moment. I'm just going to go home and see my daughter. Elena hugged him impulsively. Thank you for everything, for caring enough to risk everything, for reminding me what actually matters. Thank you for listening. Most people in your position wouldn't have. Most people in my position are cowards. I'm trying to be better than that. Logan left through a side entrance to avoid the journalists. Outside, the morning was bright and clear. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the sunlight warm his face, feeling the weight of the past week slowly lifting. His phone rang. Marcus Chen. Logan, I just got off the phone with the prosecutors. They're dropping all charges against you and Elena. Turns out, when you catch a board member committing actual fraud, they're willing to overlook some unauthorized access to files. You're free. Logan leaned against the building, relief washing over him in waves. Free. Completely. They want you to testify against Thomas, but that's voluntary. No jail time, no trial. You get to go home to your daughter. Thank you, Marcus. Seriously. Thank you. Thank Elena. She's the one who paid my fee. Speaking of which, she also asked me to discuss something else with you. She wants to offer you a job. Logan laughed. Doing what? I'm not exactly qualified to be a corporate executive. Director of Financial Analysis and Risk Assessment. New position. Your job would be to review all major transactions and flag potential problems before they become disasters. Basically doing what you just did, but officially and without the corporate espionage part. I don't know. I'm not sure I want to go back to that world. Think about it. The offer stands. And Logan? You did good work this week. You should be proud. After the call ended, Logan walked to the bus stop and rode across town to Mia's school. He was early for dismissal, so he waited outside with the other parents, feeling strangely out of place in his suit among the mothers in yoga pants and fathers in work uniforms. When the bell rang and kids started pouring out, Logan spotted Mia immediately. She saw him at the same moment, and her face lit up. Daddy! She ran to him and he caught her, lifting her off the ground in a hug that felt like coming home. Hey, sweetheart. Surprise. You're here. You came. She pulled back to look at his face. Are you okay? Are you still in trouble? No trouble. Everything's fixed. Well, mostly fixed. But the important part is, I'm here and I'm staying. Promise, promise? Promise, promise. They walked home together, Mia chattering about her day, about the math test she aced and the art project they were starting tomorrow. Normal kid things, the things Logan had been terrified he might never hear again. That evening, after dinner and homework and their nightly chapter of the fantasy book they were reading, after Mia was asleep with her nightlight glowing softly, Logan sat at the kitchen table and thought about Elena's job offer. Part of him wanted to say no, to stay in the safe invisibility of his night shift, cleaning offices and staying out of trouble. But another part, the part that Mia had said she was proud of, wanted to believe that maybe he could do more, that maybe the things he knew could actually help people if he used them the right way. His phone buzzed, a text from Martinez. Just heard the news. They're keeping the Chicago plant open. All of us. You saved our jobs, man. Thank you. Logan stared at the message for a long time. 432 people in Chicago. 2,800 total across all the facilities. Families who would keep their homes, send their kids to college, plan for futures that almost got erased by spreadsheet formulas and corporate greed. He'd done that. Him and Elena together. They'd stood up when it mattered and refused to back down. And because of that, thousands of lives were different now. Logan thought about what Martinez had once told him, years ago when they'd worked together. That the hardest part of their job wasn't building the models or crunching the numbers. It was remembering that every decision they made rippled outward into real lives. That they had a responsibility to get it right because people they'd never meet were depending on them. He'd forgotten that for a while. Let the guilt and fear drive him into hiding. But maybe it was time to stop hiding. Time to use what he knew to make sure other people didn't make the same mistakes he had. Logan pulled out his laptop and composed an email to Elena. I'll take the job. On one condition, I get to set the standards for risk assessment, and nobody gets to override my analysis for political reasons. If I say a deal is too risky, we don't do it, no matter how attractive the numbers look. Her response came 5 minutes later. Deal. Welcome back, Logan. We're going to do good work together. 6 months later, Logan stood in a conference room on the 45th floor of the financial tower. Not the executive floor where he used to empty trash cans, but close enough that he could see his old route when he looked out the window. The office was his now, Director of Financial Analysis and Risk Assessment. A title that sounded important but really just meant he got paid to tell people when their ideas were terrible. He was surprisingly good at it. Elena knocked and entered without waiting for an answer. She did that now, moved through the building with a confidence that came from surviving your own board trying to destroy you and coming out stronger. Ready for this? She asked. Probably not, but let's do it anyway. They were presenting a new acquisition proposal to the board, a competitor who'd approached them about a merger. Logan's analysis showed it was viable, but required significant investment in employee training and retention. No mass layoffs, no quick savings, just steady, sustainable growth built on actual value creation instead of financial engineering. Westfield was gone, removed from the board after the investigation into his false testimony. Thomas was facing federal charges and had resigned in disgrace. The new board members were younger, more diverse, and actually interested in long-term strategy over quarterly earnings manipulation. "How's Mia?" Elena asked as they walked toward the boardroom. "Good. She's reading 3 grade levels above her class now. Teacher says she might skip 4th grade. Smart kid. She gets it from her mother." Logan paused. "She asked me something last night. She wanted to know if you and I were dating." Elena stopped walking. "What did you tell her?" "I told her we're friends, good friends who work together and respect each other." "And she said?" "She said that sounds boring and she thinks we should go to dinner sometime. Like a real dinner, not a work dinner." Elena smiled. "Your 9-year-old daughter is trying to set you up." "Apparently. I told her I'd ask you, but I wasn't making any promises." "Ask me what?" Logan took a breath. Over the past 6 months, he and Elena had built something he valued too much to risk on the wrong assumption. But Mia was right. There was something there. Something that had started as professional respect and grown into something deeper. "Would you like to have dinner sometime? Not a work dinner, just us." Elena studied his face for a moment. "Yes, I'd like that." "Yeah?" "Yeah, but Logan, we should probably keep it quiet for a while. People already talk about us enough." "Agreed. Low-key. Private. No pressure." "Perfect." Elena checked her watch, and now we're late. "Come on." They presented their analysis to the board. Some members loved it. Others thought it was too conservative. But in the end, they voted to move forward with Logan's recommended structure: slower growth, higher costs, better long-term stability, and 0 job losses. After the meeting, Logan returned to his office and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Martinez was working his shift at the Chicago plant. 2,800 families were having dinner together, planning vacations, helping kids with homework, living their lives because 2 people had decided that profit wasn't the only thing that mattered. It wasn't a perfect system. Logan knew that. There would be more fights, more deals structured the wrong way, more people willing to sacrifice others for personal gain. But he was in a position now to push back, to make sure at least some decisions got made the right way. His phone buzzed. A text from Mia. "Did you ask her?" Logan smiled and typed back, "Yes." She said yes. "I knew it. Can I meet her for real now? Soon, I promise. Promise, 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 promise. Logan set down his phone and turned back to his computer. He had 3 more acquisition proposals to review before tomorrow's meeting. All of them involved job cuts. All of them needed someone to question whether those cuts were actually necessary or just convenient. He opened the first file and started reading. It was hard work, exhausting work, and it didn't always end the way he wanted, but it mattered, and mattering was enough. Because in the end, that's what Logan had learned through all of this, that the systems we build aren't inevitable, that the choices we make about how to treat people aren't predetermined by market forces or competitive pressure, or any of the other excuses people use to justify cruelty. That sometimes one person speaking up can change the trajectory of thousands of lives. It doesn't always work. The world is still full of people like Thomas and Westfield, people who value money more than humanity and will destroy anyone who gets in their way. But it's also full of people like Elena and Martinez and Professor Hartman, people who believe that business can be both profitable and decent. And maybe, just maybe, if enough people fight for that second vision instead of accepting the first one, we can build something better than the world we inherited. Something that values creation over extraction, sustainability over quarterly earnings, humanity over spreadsheet optimization. Logan didn't have all the answers. He'd made plenty of mistakes and would probably make more. But he was trying now, really trying, and he'd taught Mia something important, that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. It's about knowing the cost and paying it because some things are worth more than safety. 3,000 people still had their jobs because Logan had walked into a boardroom and refused to stay silent. That number would probably grow as he and Elena continued their work. More deals restructured, more jobs saved, more families protected from becoming statistics in someone else's financial model. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was something, and something was better than nothing. Logan looked at the photo on his desk. Mia grinning at the camera, gap-toothed and proud, holding up a report card with straight A's. The girl who'd told him she was proud of him even when he thought he'd lost everything. He was going to make sure she stayed proud, whatever it took. Outside his window, the city glowed in the evening light. Millions of people living their lives, most of them unaware that their futures were being decided in rooms like this one by people they'd never meet. Logan used to be one of those people making decisions without thinking about the faces behind the numbers. Now, he was the person who made sure someone was thinking about those faces. It wasn't the career he'd planned. It wasn't the life he'd expected. But it was good work, meaningful work, the kind of work that let him sleep at night and look his daughter in the eyes without shame. And really, what else was there? Logan closed the file, packed his laptop, and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new fights, new chances to get it right or wrong. But tonight, he was going to make dinner with Mia, read another chapter of their book, and tuck her in with the promise that he'd be there when she woke up. Some promises were easy to keep now, and that made all the difference.